For months, a strange narrative followed Shedeur Sanders everywhere he went. It didn't matter what he did on the field, how he carried himself, or how prepared he was for the moment, the story was already written for him. He was labeled overhyped, unprepared, too confident, even unable to lead an NFL offense. And these claims didn't come from random trolls online. They came from major media figures, team insiders, and analysts who never hesitated to speak with authority about a player they clearly knew almost nothing about. But here's the truth. None of those labels came from people who actually watched Shedeur work. None of it came from his teammates. None of it came from coaches who understood his preparation. It came from people determined to push a narrative, and for a while, they almost succeeded. Almost. Because then the world saw Shedeur for themselves. They saw the arm strength, the poise, the accuracy, the resilience. They saw a rookie outperform veterans, carry an injured team, and silence every doubt with actual evidence. And suddenly, those same critics fell quiet. But the loudest voice wasn't Shedeur's. It was Coach Prime. When Prime reposted a list exposing every lie told about his son, it wasn't just a clapback. It was a declaration. A father stepping in to remind the world that truth doesn't change just because the narrative does. And that moment sparked a fire that the media machine couldn't put out. Long before Shedeur Sanders took a single NFL snap, a powerful storyline had already been built around him, and none of it came close to matching reality. It was almost like someone handed the public a script and expected everyone to read along without asking questions. Suddenly, headlines appeared claiming Shedeur had poor study habits, that he didn't get along with teammates, that he lacked the arm strength to compete in the league, and that he didn't have the IQ to lead an NFL offense. These weren't critiques based on analysis. They were character attacks disguised as scouting notes. And as wild as those claims sounded at the time, they spread fast. Too fast. Big outlets repeated them. Analysts debated them. Local Cleveland media treated them as if they were confirmed facts. And casual fans, well, they ate it up, because that's what happens when a narrative grows louder than the truth. But here's what makes this so strange. Not one of those accusations matched anything teammates or coaches ever said about him. No one inside the locker room backed up those claims. And Shedeur himself never gave the public a reason to believe any of it. He showed up, stayed focused, and kept working. The noise grew louder, but he never changed his approach. He chose to let his performance be the response. Then came the moment that flipped everything on its head. Shedeur finally got his shot, and the field didn't lie the way the headlines did. He threw darts downfield. He extended plays with patience instead of panic. He carried a broken offense and made it look functional. He looked calm, confident, and composed in situations that leave veterans rattled. All those weaknesses the media insisted were real, nowhere to be found. And as his performances grew stronger, something fascinating happened. The critics who once pushed those narratives suddenly shifted their tone. Now it wasn't "Shedeur can't play." It was, "Wow." It was the type of flip-flop that exposes exactly how shallow the original claims were. But the person who took this the most personally wasn't Shedeur. It was his father, and he'd been watching quietly for months, waiting for the right moment to address the lies head-on. For months, Coach Prime stayed quiet. He watched the media spin narratives that had no roots in truth. He saw analysts repeat the same talking points as if they were reading from a script written by someone with an agenda. He heard the whispers that his son wasn't ready, wasn't disciplined, wasn't capable. And through all of it, he held his peace. Not because he agreed, but because he knew something the public didn't. The lies would collapse the moment Shedeur stepped onto the field. But once those lies began unraveling in real time, Prime decided it was finally time to speak. And when he did, ... He didn't mince words or offer vague hints. Instead, he reposted a list that laid out every false accusation that had been spread about Shedeur, one by one, lie after lie, and he labeled them exactly for what they were. Shedeur doesn't get along with teammates, a lie. Poor study habits, a lie. Sits in the back of meetings, a lie. Weak arm, another lie. Lacks the IQ to run an NFL offense. A lie so outrageous it almost felt like satire after watching him read defenses like a veteran. What made Prime's post hit so hard wasn't the emotion behind it, it was the accuracy. Everything on that list had been weaponized against Shedeur before he ever had the chance to prove himself. These weren't critiques, they were attempts to shape public perception. But Prime didn't stop at exposing the misinformation. He ended the post with a reminder that cut through every narrative, every rumor, every false headline. God has the final say, not man. And that line spoke to something deeper happening in Shedeur's story, something beyond football. Prime wasn't just defending his son. He was defending the idea that no amount of manufactured doubt could override purpose, preparation, or truth. The media might have tried to write the story, but they didn't control the outcome. And once that message hit, the conversation shifted again. Because if the lies were exposed this easily, fans started asking the next logical question: where did those lies even come from in the first place? Once Coach Prime exposed the list of lies, it forced people to confront a question that had been quietly whispered for months. Why were these narratives created in the first place? Because they didn't come from teammates. They didn't come from coaches. They didn't come from anyone inside the building who actually interacted with Shedeur. These claims came from outside voices, media members, analysts, anonymous sources, and certain corners of Cleveland coverage that seemed unusually eager to discredit him. So the question becomes, what was everyone so afraid of? Rumors suggest that some people believe Shedeur's confidence made him unlikable. Others claim certain analysts underestimated him because he didn't fit the typical mold of a fifth-round quarterback. And some fans argue the league simply wasn't ready for a young player with this much spotlight, swag, and influence before he ever took a snap. To be fair, these are just theories, but every false accusation targeted a different part of his identity, his intelligence, his discipline, his leadership, his preparation, his confidence. The agenda wasn't about football anymore. It was about shaping public perception before the truth had the chance to challenge it. And that's exactly why so many people were shocked when Shedeur's actual performance didn't match the script. He was poised instead of rattled, smart instead of reckless, locked in instead of unprepared. The lies fell apart instantly because reality didn't support a single one of them. But when a narrative collapses, someone always ends up exposed. And in this case, it wasn't Shedeur. It was the people who tried to profit off a false storyline. The ones who underestimated how loud the culture could be when it gathers behind someone. The ones who didn't realize millions of fans were ready. To defend a young man who carried himself with humility, confidence, and purpose. And now that the truth is out, the media isn't the only group with questions to answer. Because while the public was busy arguing over whether Shedeur deserved more opportunities, something even bigger was unfolding behind the scenes. Something that suggests the resistance to playing him might not have been about performance at all. As the truth slowly surfaced, fans began noticing a pattern that didn't sit right. It wasn't just that the media kept repeating false narratives. It was that the Browns themselves seemed strangely hesitant to put Shedeur on the field. Even when the offense struggled, even when the starter underperformed, even when it was clear to everyone watching that the kid was different. And that hesitation sparked whispers that turned into speculation. Speculation that turned into full conversations across YouTube, Twitter, and NFL spaces. Why are they keeping him on the bench? Who benefits from Shedeur not playing? Why does it feel like someone is protecting an old plan instead of embracing the future? Rumors suggest the Browns might have entered this season already committed to a long-term quarterback structure, one that didn't include a fifth-round rookie rewriting their entire timeline. Others believe the organization worried about the public pressure that would come if Shedeur outperformed the veterans too quickly. And then there are those who think the team didn't want to admit they misjudged him during the draft. No matter where the truth lies, one thing is undeniable. The moment Shedeur got real playing time, every excuse evaporated. He didn't look overwhelmed. He didn't look confused. He didn't look like a backup. He looked like the most composed player on the field. That's when things started backfiring on the people who doubted him. The more he succeeded, the more obvious the delay in giving him a chance became. Analysts who once criticized him were suddenly explaining themselves. Local reporters started backpedaling. The same people who questioned his leadership now praised his maturity. And while fans celebrated his rise, they also couldn't ignore how poorly the situation had been handled from the start. When someone is this prepared, this polished, and this impactful, hiding them doesn't just look like a miscalculation. It looks intentional. Again, we can't say for certain what the motive was, but the outcome is crystal clear. The attempt to slow Shedeur's momentum only made his breakthrough bigger. And the moment he proved himself, the entire narrative around him shifted, setting the stage for the next controversy that would shake the fan base even further. If there was one moment that turned quiet suspicion into full-blown outrage, it was that now infamous two-point conversion. The Browns had just watched Shedeur drag them back into a game they had no business being in. He was cooking. He was calm. He was in complete control of the offense. Even the opposing sideline could feel the momentum shifting. And then, when the entire stadium expected the ball in the hands of the quarterback who brought them there, he was taken off the field. Just like that, fans froze. Commentators stumbled through their sentences. Social media erupted in real time. Even former players, the ones who normally choose their words carefully, couldn't believe what they were watching. It wasn't just a questionable decision. It felt like a betrayal of common sense. This wasn't a gadget play in a preseason game. This wasn't a harmless experiment in a blowout. This was the deciding moment, the play that could tie the game. And the quarterback, who had dissected the Titans' defense all afternoon, wasn't even allowed to touch the ball. Immediately, the theories began flying. Some said it was analytics gone wrong. Some believed it was coaching panic. Others argued it was a deeper issue, a refusal to let Shedeur be the hero on a night when he had earned it. Even Shannon Sharp, someone known for staying measured until he can't anymore, completely unloaded on the decision. He questioned the strategy, the timing, the logic, and the mindset behind sidelining a red-hot quarterback. But beneath all the noise was a deeper frustration. Shedeur had done everything right. He managed the game. He stayed poised after mistakes. He delivered clutch throw after clutch throw. He kept the offense alive when everything around him fell apart. And yet, when it mattered most, the coaching staff treated him like an afterthought. Whether the decision came from confusion, stubbornness, or something else entirely, one thing became undeniable. That one play fractured the trust between fans and the coaching staff instantly. It was the moment people stopped making excuses and started asking real questions. And those questions only intensified once Coach Prime stepped in and made it clear he had been watching everything unfold from a distance. Coach Prime isn't the type to insert himself into every headline involving his sons. He lets the field expose whatever's real. But after that two-point disaster, after watching Shedeur fight through chaos, lead a comeback, and still get disrespected in the final moment? Prime's patience finally snapped. And instead of throwing subtle shade or making vague comments, he went straight for the root. He reposted the list of lies, the exact narrative that had been built, repeated, and recycled about Shedeur for months. Except this time, he labeled every bullet point with sharp, simple clarity. Lie, lie, lie. He didn't just defend his son. He exposed the entire system that tried to bury him. Prime sent a message bigger than the Browns, bigger than Shedeur, and bigger than any single game. You don't get to assassinate a young man's character and then act confused when reality proves you wrong. His statement wasn't emotional. It was factual. Everything accused of Shedeur had already been disproven on the field. Lack of intelligence? The kid read defenses like a veteran. Poor practice habits? Coaches praised his preparation. Weak arm? He threw NFL-level deep balls with ease. Bad teammate? Every locker room interaction contradicted that narrative. And the timing of Prime's message wasn't random. He spoke up right when the entire world finally saw the truth for themselves. The comeback, the poise, the leadership, the talent, the resilience. Shedeur didn't just outperform expectations. He embarrassed the agenda built against him. And Prime wasn't about to let the same people who spread those lies quietly disappear into the background now that they'd been proven wrong. But what made his response powerful wasn't the frustration, it was the pride. Prime ended his message with a reminder grounded in something deeper than football. God has the final say, not man. It wasn't a clapback, it wasn't a rant, it was a warning to the media, to the league, and to anyone who thought they could control the narrative forever. And that warning raised an even bigger question. If the truth is finally out, what does this mean for Shedeur's future and for the people who underestimated him? While the media was busy pushing false narratives, something completely unexpected was happening behind the scenes. Something no scout, analyst, or insider could control. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just gaining attention. He was becoming a global phenomenon. And the numbers weren't subtle. They were seismic. When the search data dropped and revealed that Shedeur was the most Googled athlete in the world in 2025, it stunned people who had spent months dismissing him. Think about that for a second. A fifth-round pick, a player some analysts swore would never succeed, was generating more interest than LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, Caitlin Clark, Steph Curry, Angel Reese, and every other superstar across every major sport. This wasn't hype. This wasn't media spin. This wasn't luck. This was the culture speaking louder than the critics. People weren't drawn to Shedeur because of controversy. They weren't searching his name because of scandal. They were watching a young black quarterback carry himself with confidence, focus, and grace, while the world tried to sabotage him. They were watching a new generation of fans rally around someone who refused to shrink, refused to fold, because in their minds, a fifth-round rookie wasn't supposed to have this much influence. He wasn't supposed to change the energy of an entire franchise. He wasn't supposed to become a cultural symbol before even securing a long-term starting role. And he definitely wasn't supposed to eclipse the league's established faces in global attention. But he did, effortlessly. His rise wasn't manufactured. It was organic. It came from fans who saw past the lies. It came from young people who felt inspired by his confidence. It came from communities that recognized what he represented. And most importantly, it came from performance. Undeniable, unfiltered, uncoached performance. Every comeback throw, every tight window strike, every moment of composure under pressure. All of it fueled the momentum that no media, and while fans celebrated, the NFL quietly realized something else. If Shedeur's popularity is this massive now, what happens once he actually starts winning? Because if this many people are invested in his story today, the next chapter could push him into a level of superstardom the league hasn't seen in years. As Shedeur's popularity exploded, something unexpected happened. The very narratives meant to weaken him ended up strengthening the movement around him. Every lie exposed by Coach Prime didn't just fall apart. It pushed more people towards Shedeur, turning him from a quarterback into a symbol. What the critics intended as barriers became fuel. What the media hoped would diminish his image ended up amplifying it across the entire sports world. And the real twist? The public didn't just reject the false narratives. They started questioning the system that created them. Fans began revisiting old interviews, old scouting reports, old headlines. They noticed how consistently the same talking points were repeated. They noticed how carefully certain stories were pushed. They noticed how every critique targeted the very quality Shedeur excelled at. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt intentional. But instead of breaking him, it built a foundation made of loyal supporters, cultural backing, and millions of people who now had a personal stake in his success. Meanwhile, every impressive performance from Shedeur acted like another spotlight directed back at the critics. His calm under pressure made the poor decision-maker narrative collapse. His deep ball accuracy made the weak arm narrative look ridiculous. His leadership in the huddle destroyed the bad teammate angle. The lies weren't just wrong, they were embarrassingly wrong. And every time Shedeur proved them wrong, the culture grew louder. You could feel the shift happening. Every highlight clip went viral. Every post-game quote spread like wildfire. Every sign of progress added another crack in the wall the media tried to build around him. It reached a point where the narrative wasn't controlled by journalists anymore. It belonged to the people watching him rise. Then came the biggest realization of all. If Shedeur had been given a fair shot from the beginning, he might already be one of the most talked about quarterbacks in the league. Instead, the resistance only made him bigger, more supported, and more undeniable. The lies didn't stop him. They created the movement that's carrying him now. And the NFL is starting to recognize something the media never wanted to admit. You can't slow down someone who's already become a cultural force. When you step back and look at everything, the false narratives, the resistance, the media noise, the questionable decisions, the sudden shifts in public opinion, it becomes clear that this wasn't just a football storyline. It was a battle over perception, power, and the right to define your own future. And in that battle, Shedeur Sanders didn't just survive, he changed the landscape. The media tried to paint him as unprepared. The critics tried to label him as overhyped. Certain insiders tried to shrink his potential before he took a single snap. But reality has a way of silencing the noise. Every moment of leadership exposed the truth the media tried so hard to bury. But the most powerful part of this entire saga wasn't Shedeur's talent. It was the culture that rose behind him. Fans didn't just support him, they defended him. They pushed back against the misinformation. They held the media accountable. They amplified the truth louder than any headline could suppress. And when Coach Prime stepped in and exposed every lie one by one, it unified the movement even more. What began as a smear campaign turned into a spotlight. What began as doubt transformed into undeniable momentum. What began as an attempt to control the narrative ended with millions of people rewriting it. Now the NFL finds itself at a crossroads. They're not just dealing with a promising young quarterback. They're dealing with a cultural force. A media magnet, a rising superstar whose story resonates far beyond the field. And that scares some people, because Shedeur represents a shift they can't control. The truth is simple. Shedeur didn't just prove he belongs in the league. He proved he was underestimated from day one, and every person who doubted him, dismissed him, or tried to shrink his impact is now watching something they never expected. The rise of a player whose story became bigger than their agenda. This journey is nowhere near finished. If anything, it's only now beginning. Because once the truth breaks through, once a movement forms around someone, once the world finally sees who you really are, they never forget.